We'll bring the meeting of the Design Review Committee to order. Let's have a roll call.
Okay. Call to order. Patrick Kavanaugh,
Here?
Joy Coley,
Here.
Brian Deputy, Jennifer Dryden Hess,
Here.
Esther Jacobson Bates.
And Esther has informed us that she will not be joining us today.
Okay. Jennifer, can I ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. Hand over your heart, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the members had an opportunity to approve the agenda as presented? Any
Yes.
changes or adjustments to it? Okay, great.
No.
Before we get to the minutes, I want to sort of, I guess this may fall under member comment later, but I appreciate the efforts that the city manager, training, and the staff and the consultants have done to advance the consideration of the multiple applicants that are applications that are submitted. I know some of them were in a kind of a backlog mode, and we just have to work our way through that. And we're going to try to do it as expeditiously as possible, make sure that the interest of of all of the parties are represented. But the work that's been done has been extraordinary in terms of quality and volume. After the last meeting, I received a complaint from an interested citizen that, and it wasn't about anybody but me, she said I didn't consistently speak into the microphone, even though I had it turned on, so she couldn't always understand it. She heard if I turned this way, I didn't. So I'm just asking that you take a lead from my failures and be wary of that, the little light on, and make sure that, I always say, I have to be careful not to forget that the only people hearing me are in the room. That's, there are many more than that, obviously, or there may be more than that. Also, last time, I did not have a break time. We went 3 hours without a break, and I apologize for that. If it appears that our meeting may take that long, or if and when requested, I will be sure that we take a break. So, any questions about that? Okay, I hope I've
I hope
cleaned
that
up.
citizen, citizen doesn't regret asking us to speak up.
Yeah, it all depends on what you're going to say.
I like to chat, so.
Yeah. Okay, we are reviewing both the April 15th minutes as well as the March 11 minutes. Just take them in that order. March 11 was our first meeting, but we didn't have those minutes in hand at the last meeting. So again, if unless there's any comment about them, I'm open to a motion to accept those minutes, unless you have any comments or corrections.
Patrick, in the city council meeting, you mentioned the minutes from last meeting.
Now, I'm looking at only the March 11.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
just only March
Yep.
11 now, yep.
Okay, then I motion to accept them.
I second.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor of approving the March 11th meeting as submitted? You lead the vote on that?
Yep, I will lead the vote.
Okay,
And I'll go alphabetical order and excluding Esther Bates, and she's not here tonight.
okay,
Patrick Kavanaugh,
aye.
Joy Coley,
Aye.
Brian Deputy,
Aye.
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
All right. The first meeting minutes are approved 4-0.
Okay, great. That's for the March 11th meeting. Okay, for the April 15th meeting, you had something, Joy?
It was actually your mention at the city council meeting regarding so on the 425 First Street property, it was regarding the applicant's agreement to our decision.
Yeah.
And you felt that wasn't represented in the minutes, and
Well, an earlier draft it wasn't, but
the
that's
current draft,
been,
it's been remedied.
it has
Okay.
been remedied in this current draft, and yeah, I appreciate that.
Sure.
But it is in there, and I appreciate that inclusion. I do think it's important for the record to show how a committee arrived at the conclusion it did, and I think, again, in that case, I think it was important to understand that, as we try to, we're not going to always be successful, but if we can reach a final decision that we all agree on and the applicant finds acceptable, that's great, and I think it'd be good if the minutes show that, but sometimes it's not going to show that, that's fine.
Sure.
But I think the minutes do adequately reflect on that part. Are there any other comments regarding the minutes of April 15th?
Did you have anything?
None
Yep.
for me.
If not, then is there a motion to,
Motion to
Approve.
accept the agenda
Okay.
from April 15th?
I
I'm
sec-
sorry,
oh,
the minute, oh,
Yeah.
the minutes from April 15th.
okay,
and I second.
and second? Okay.
We'll take
we
it
have
to a vote.
Motion and second.
Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joy Coley,
Aye.
Brian Deputy,
Aye.
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 4-0.
Okay. Next item I have on the agenda is public comment on items not on the agenda. And do you know, is there was a request presented to Esther for someone during this time to provide us a briefing on the dark sky friendly lighting issue, and I don't have the name.
The person that is part of the We Watch and the organization that have put together this binder, Dark Sky,
Right.
is not well and
Okay.
has asked that this item be put on the next agenda.
Okay,
And we will agenda as a item.
okay, great. Okay, now, the next item is DRC Review Committee application
So we-
process.
we-
Sorry?
Can still leave the meeting open for other comments.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yep, that's right. Are there any other public comments on items not on the agenda? Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Is there anybody on Zoom?
If I can admit that person. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Ask.
Are there any comments for items not on the agenda from those that are on Zoom? If so, speak now. There are no comments.
okay, great. Thank you. The next item is the DRC Review Committee application process. There's a memo in the materials on page 16, I think, relating to this item. And I have a few comments I'd like to make just to sort of set it. It's perhaps somewhat repetitive from what some of the conversations are, though. But this, for the other committee's information and for the public's information, this was an issue that was discussed in a meeting that I have with the city manager prior to every meeting, and Esther joins me. I think I indicated that before. That's sort of I think, a good practice if one of us can't come or whatever, but it's also good to develop the agenda. And we had a meeting with the city manager preparing the agenda for this meeting. And we continued to talk about the challenges that this committee and its predecessors have had in identifying the correct design standards and other guidelines which applicants are expected to follow and which we are expected to enforce. Again, as a reminder, when it passed ordinance 21-347 at its meeting on February 8th this year, the city council abolished predecessor agencies and created the Design Review Committee and added a new chapter in the city code under Title II that is specifically for the design review committees, spelling out the design review committee's responsibilities. By this ordinance, this current council said that the DRC is expected to, quote, "develop aesthetic standards and/or requirements for properties within the village area of the city." And we have received a set of design standards that were developed about 30 years ago, that's this item, and that do closely follow the community design element of Solvang's last general plan that was approved in 1988. And now we know that the city is undertaking a new comprehensive general plan, which we'll get a report on later, I think, at the current status, because you had your first meeting this week, I believe. We'll have an element, a design element in it, and the basis for any changes to our current design standards. However, until that new general plan is completed, in my opinion, the committee has little choice but to apply the guidelines that we've received, the community design element of the general plan of 1988, upon which those guidelines were based, and the guidance provided by the city council in ordinance 21-347. Again, as a reminder and to be a record of this meeting, to guide us, the city council in that ordinance articulated the standards which were expected to apply and presumably to which applicants are to conform, to preserve that those are to preserve and enhance for the citizens and tourists of Solvang the historical Danish and Northern European architectural styles, historic assets, and character of the town's commercial centers. Again, this is not language from 32 years ago. This is language from last February. To promote safe, functional, and attractive development of business and commercial areas, to unify commercial and industrial properties, to protect and preserve the unique and cultural features within Solvang, and to protect commercial and residential property values by enhancing the city's appearance. In a meeting, in a meeting with the vice chair and I had with the city manager this last week, we expressed the notion that applicants should be required, first should be informed of the standards that this committee are expected to follow, including these and including the guidance in the ordinance and also the community design element, that applicants, when they start their application process, should be made aware of those. And what they're not now, and you saw the applications in the bundles, those applications are very comprehensive. I think they probably need some updating for sure, and I think maybe you could speak to that shortly. But one question that is not in there for applicants to respond to is, how does the project you submitted support these? And some of these are things that, these are the ones that, they should do that. Obviously, we've had issues where it's hard to see how applications or projects as they're submitted are in conformance with this, and we're left to try to arbitrate, and that means, compromise on these guidelines, and I'm uncomfortable with that. After reviewing the various applications that are included in the agenda bundle that we all have now, I really don't believe any application asks applicants to explain how their application conforms to the design standards. While that was a suggestion in our conversation, I don't believe that a change in the application form would occur by my direction to the city manager or the vice chairman's and my direction to the city manager. I think it should only come after the entire DRC, that's us, directs the city staff to do so with a majority vote. I welcome a motion to that effect.
Question, do
Yes.
you have a thought about what you would specifically ask, or is it as simple as provide evidence of conforming to the design guideline? Or, is it open-ended? Like, how are you thinking about?
Well, I think, I want to give the applicants, my sense is I would give the applicants broad latitude. But they have a series of documents that I think right now, until the general plan is updated and design standards are updated based on that new general plan. That we have, that old general plan, we have these design guidelines that were developed about 1990, I think. And we now have a brand-new document dated February 8th, which is the city council, the current city council's description of the responsibilities and expectations on the design review committee. And, you know, they speak specifically, as I just read it, you know what they mean, or what they read, but they do speak specifically about the historical Danish and Northern European architectural styles, historical assets, and character of the town's commercial center, and other things too,
Right,
not
so
just that.
we're basically just going to ask them open-ended to make reference that they meet those guidelines.
Here are the
And here's
guidelines
the
that,
evid- and here's the
we're
evidence.
supposed to enforce. So you should, you know, you should be able to explain to us.
Correct.
How
Or
your
their
proposal is
architect can.
consistent with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, I agree, so I'm good with it. I think it's a really good idea.
And the intent then, just to make sure I'm clear, is to hopefully prevent maybe people coming and having presentations of things that don't actually fall under those guidelines. So it gives them an opportunity to kind of attest, hey, this is what we're doing, and they're kind of required in a sense to give it a little bit more thought and maybe understand the design guidelines a little better before they come with.
That's
those. Is
true.
that-
I
is that what
do
your
think
thinking is,
if
or-
if we were to pass a motion that's made that requirement today, it would apply to applications submitted after today.
Sure,
Right.
of course.
It doesn't,
yeah.
Yeah, it's not retroactive.
But the other thing that I can see by us asking that, asking prospective applicants in the future to do, it helps inform us, pardon me, it helps inform us of all of the, sort of the dimensions of the issue, and I think it will help inform us develop refined guidelines going forward. As people come in and explain the challenges of conforming to what we have now, or some things that may have been missed, I think it will help inform that process of updating.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And Patrick, also, then I have a question too, because it's broad. you know, And that's fine. I'm just thinking like going forward, because, so the thing is very broad, and then people bring in their colors for, you know, their buildings and things, but they really don't have a real good sense of, you know, what exactly, all the things that we evaluate those things with. I mean, they do a little bit. So my question is, you know, approving that because that's what we have, but then also looking towards maybe just the easiest one, I think, is in terms of like paint colors and things like that, is to sort of somewhat quickly do a style guide, in essence, that would maybe give, I don't know, 15 different palettes that we would sort of approve based on, you know, sort of what Esther has in terms of the history of the, you know, the.
I think that's a
there's
great
not-
idea, and something I think we've seen a value to have now already, and I think that's something that we can do.
Yeah.
That does, I think, doing that is not stopped by this.
Oh, no, not at all. No.
But I think there are a few things that we can, kind of low-hanging fruit, if I can call it that. And I think that's something that can be done. I'll also say that the process of rewriting or redoing the applications is actually something in a way underway. So these old paper forms here that are really probably some things that are asked, you know, like ages of your grandchildren or whatever. No, I'm just, but some of the questions, I think, may not be as relevant as some of the things that aren't asked that we're suggesting.
Right. So just to give you all a little bit of an update on what we are doing with our application processing, we are in the very last stages of implementing an online permitting software, which will then automate processes that have been completely paper-based to date. So we've done a huge scanning project. We've been working for quite a while now on this permitting software. It's almost ready to go live, and once that happens, We'll basically revamp the whole application process, streamline it, and both applicants and staff will have a very clear path as the project comes in, what applies to processing of that project. So this is going to happen this summer, and will go live, be available to the public. So that will be definitely a step that, if we are wanting people to review design guidelines, you'll simply have, a link in there and say, explain how you conform to this, and here it is available for your review. But until then, we'll probably just take one of the forms that we have here and add an additional line item to that.
Sure.
Okay.
So then, Patrick, do you have specific verbiage that you're?
I don't have a
suggesting then?
language, I don't have specific verbiage, I'm sorry, I don't.
No, that's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No.
Just thinking, do we agree on a motion that we come up with some type of verbiage and then implement that, or should we hash that out?
I think we
right
could
here?
give them, I think we come up with language that will adequately provide the city manager and staff with a direction to proceed. I don't think it's overly complicated about it.
Yeah.
But the language was.
I think Xenia just said it.
Yeah. Wait, yeah.
I think we have general direction on
Yeah.
what you're looking
Yeah.
for, so
Yeah.
Okay.
we can,
Okay, well, then, shall we, I hate to not have language though about it.
So the motion would be to add a line item into the
Permit.
permitting or application process that would ask the applicant to acknowledge that they understand the design guidelines and that they fall within,
And how their
Those-
project conforms to them.
Right.
right, thank you.
Okay, yeah. And I think the only thing I would suggest is that it is all of the applicants, falling under the jurisdiction of the Design Review Committee, because it's buildings, it's developments,
It's all- no,
it's
it's
signs,
all
signage.
applicant.
Sure.
It is paint colors.
Yeah.
So those things are, so all of those, well, you see the various applications you have here. There's, I think, 4 different kinds of applications that you fill out. But all of those applications would be amended to reflect the requirement that the applicant provide an explanation for how the proposal complies with the design standards which the Design Review Committee enforce.
right, so just to clarify on that, you do have other responsibilities too, other than just design guidelines, right? There's the
Correct.
code sections that are applicable to you as well. So I think
Right.
here we are really focusing on the design guidelines and making sure that applicants are aware of design guidelines and that they're clear that the DRC is
Right.
committed to those design guidelines.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we will think through the easiest logistic way of doing it. It may be a separate application that we just make sure that for any applicable application, the applicants receive it.
So
Okay.
do you then want to wait till you have something and then we vote on it next time?
No, I think you gave us plenty of general direction. I think we'll work out the logistics of how to implement it. I don't think it will,
Okay.
I mean, it won't take us long.
Again,
For the next applications,
You have
we
this
can-
process underway that's going to be
Yeah.
completed by the end of the summer or something like that?
Yes.
And this will be incorporated in,
This will be incorporated into that, but even for the next applications coming in, we can easily add this additional requirement from the applicants. And then as you review them under the new standards, we can see how well it's working. And if something needs to be tweaked, we can change that.
okay.
And just to be aware, we already have 5 applications for next meeting.
Okay.
So
That's fine.
we'll approach them and just say,
Well, I think, okay, I mean, if you have the applications, and I think it's always good for them to be aware of it, no matter
Yes.
where they are in the process.
right,
Because I think the sooner they know, then
we'll reach out
the
to
better off
them
it'll
and
be. But
explain.
I have in mind that this will apply to applicants going forward. I mean, the applicants that come in going forward, but it's.
It's a reasonable ask. I don't think
yeah.
it's anything.
And anybody that beginning that process should be expected to do it, because we'll be asking those questions at the time of the hearing. Okay?
Do we
Thank
need
you.
to, we don't need to
Thanks for
restate it, right?
your
No.
tolerance of
And
ambiguity.
vote?
So I think we would make a motion to move forward in that direction.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, let's do a vote. Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joey Colley,
Aye.
Brian Deputy,
Aye.
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Okay, carries 4-0.
Thank you so much. Next item is a project rehearing. And I know you're aware that there was a rehearing application, or pardon me, it was not a rehearing application, it was an appeal of our decision regarding the water wheel project. And perhaps, I hate to do this, Xenia, but I feel like asking you about that process that came in. And, you know, maybe I'm misstating it, but the application wasn't really an appeal. It was a substitute application for a project that was different in some ways from what was presented to us. Is that correct?
There were some, it wasn't originally an appeal, as it came through the system, so to speak. So it was scheduled for the council as an appeal.
Yeah.
Through that process, we worked with the applicant to explain some of the issues, or based on the feedback from the DRC, worked with the applicant on what could be changed easily while still addressing his issue. His biggest issue was having the charcoal color added to the color scheme.
Right.
So through doing that and actually applying the paint to the building, we found that there was, if you put the primer, it really calmed down the paint, so it's a lot darker now, and there's actually a patch in the back of the building. So based on that, actual paint that's now is the, his desired color scheme, he updated some of the just paper materials to more closely represent what the
So is it
application is.
page 36 of the materials? Is that the one that reflects
Yes, and I
what's
do,
currently being proposed now?
Yes.
It's a little different because they've darkened what was kind of a bright, vibrant is the
so
word.
I do have an additional letter that the
good.
applicant submitted last night, I believe.
You're going to send Esther a copy of that?
Yes, I will.
Or that'll be just part of the,
Thank you.
okay? What is the color of the railing designated as in the proposal?
It's the same blue.
Same blue?
Sorry, I was reading and I wasn't listening to you very well. You were saying that the color they're proposing is still the same color they were proposing before, it's just that it was depicted differently in the original images.
That is how the applicant is stating his
Yeah,
position.
that's what I thought, or that's what I got from his response at the city council meeting, and from looking at it on the building as well.
Okay.
Looks like the same color, but yeah, I
The
get that.
same color as is shown in the
So originally.
No, as the color swatch that we were given, which was the Admiral Blue, which we had, which was the real color, and it is the color that's on the building.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just that they depicted it very,
Right,
in the images.
correct.
Yeah.
In the
So-
digital image, it came
Right.
off as
Yeah.
bright.
And
Yeah.
has members had an opportunity to see the sample swatches on the building?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
And I have not seen.
okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I do have a picture if you want to see it, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, it's on a screen, but, let's see here. I don't know if this has to be shared publicly or.
No, that's okay.
So it looks like this is the color they're projecting, or I mean, proposing, the kind of darker color versus this over here, which is a lighter color. And,
Okay.
I mean, I think those are different, they look different to me.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, no
That
problem.
Gives me
Yeah,
a good idea.
And we do have the paint contractor here who has
Great.
additional information
Okay.
for
Okay.
the efforts they have in redoing the building.
sure.
He has additional information to share with us now? Yeah, if you'd like, I think let's have
Yeah.
his comments before we discuss it anymore.
Sure.
Introduce yourself and,
My name is Rick
Welcome.
Bernhardt. I have Sagebrush Painting. Rick Bernhardt, Sagebrush Painting here in the valley. Lori called today and asked if I could provide colors of the samples. We have tried to adjust these colors a little bit to make sure that they were compatible with everyone's taste. This is a little bit deeper color than Admiral Blue, which was the bright one that folks were concerned about. The white has been pushed to this color called origami white. These are both standard Sherwin-Williams colors. So I can leave these for you if you wish. Otherwise, because the owner is out of town, I'm here just trying to help and facilitate, answer questions, whatever I can do.
okay, terrific.
Thanks.
May I ask what staff's recommendation is? Has the staff recommendation changed in any way?
A little bit wet.
Lori, would you like to respond to this staff recommendation from
Yeah.
you first?
Based on the efforts of working with both Maz, the applicant, as well as the contractor, we believe that this is an appropriate response to addressing particularly the comments that came last time in regards to the wood being darker and looking like wood, but still meeting the applicant's needs. So we'd recommend moving forward with this application.
Okay.
I would,
Oh, I just wanted to see.
oh, I'm sorry.
You know, look at,
Sure.
There's a little wet still in one of
oh,
I would make a couple comments.
Sure.
You know, obviously I mean, we've discussed this at length about, you know, we're trying our best to sort of adhere to the guidelines. And, you know, I took a lot of time to look around town and you know, lived here many years now and thought I knew it all well. And then when I start looking at it from these different eyes, I see things differently. And as they've shown in their second letter here that you just
Yeah.
gave to us today, you know, they gave some examples of other buildings with blue trim. There's a number of buildings with kind of some brightly colored trim. There's some green trim on some buildings, some red trim. You know, I think that we were fairly thrown off by the visual image of the brighter colors, even though I understood that it was not going to be as bright as mentioned. And I think the half timbers, you know, of course, we are sort of trying to go for a wood look, but as I've sort of given it a little bit more thought and looked at it from different eyes, you know, I can see where the half timbers look like wood that's been painted, you know, and that seems to be the case
And it's darker than the,
commonly, and it's in contrast with the base color. So I'm kind of the opinion, I like the way it looks. I got what he was saying about wanting it to stand out, and I realized the argument was, well, does it stand out from the other white buildings in the area? Maybe not. He's saying, hey, as people walk down the street, we want this to stand out. We want people to see it in the evening. We want to draw people in that direction. That is kind of gets to be a little bit quieter as you go down the street. We're going to keep having this conversation about the white buildings with the dark trim. It's proposed here a number of times in this agenda packet, and I think in the big picture, we're probably going to have to somehow come to some kind of decision on how we want to approach that in the future. I have some thoughts on it that I thought I would just hold off until the end of the meeting, but for this agenda item, I think the way it looks now with the darker blue and a little bit darker shade of white or cream color is acceptable in my mind.
Okay.
That's kind of my thought on it.
Yep. Jennifer?
I give it also a lot of thought. And I found myself going down a very deep hole on the internet as well, just to give myself a reference, right? Because I respect very much what Esther was bringing to the table. And I sort of feel like she is trying to keep us honest. Some of the maybe past decisions weren't the best decisions. So I would have to tell you that, at least in my day job, I am very much, I think, respected for the fact that I really do care about how these things look. And I think there's a taste issue with the color, actually. I think it's very strong. And yes, it will attract attention, but I'm not sure it's absolutely the best attention. So if it was me, I would go back to something that was less vibrant, because to me it screams kind of Dodger blue and white. And it doesn't feel sophisticated in a good way to me. But I'm not going to, I'm a consensus person, so if I'm in the minority, I completely am okay with that. But I do have to speak how I really feel about things, and I think that it's a little too vibrant. It could be a little bit more sophisticated, is just my gut. And I would be out there with the palette, and I would figure out a color that was just a little bit less electric. And again, I do think we're going to come up against this, and we have to make a decision whether we want these timbers to be more neutral, or if we can allow them to be colors in the future. So it absolutely has been kind of bearing down on me, because I do feel that there's that it's unfair to everyone to sort of go back, to flip flop. So I would be okay if we just could get a tone that was a little less electric, and it is a little bit more sophisticated and not so super bright. That's just my gut.
And if I could agree with you 100%. I mean, I went down those same rabbit holes. I even brought in Pantone swatches because I was like, going through all my color books. Because looking at this, it's not, the pictures here, it's not that far off from what the actual painted swatch is. And it's very subjective, but I think
It is.
the direction of, you say sophisticated, that means one thing to one person, one thing to another, but if you're to put it into words, it would be sort of a more, grayer blue, and these kind of, so you take it out of that kind of primary or absolute sort of almost navy thing, bring in a muted, like blue, fine, great, but there's steps between here and gray, and I think our sweet spot might be somewhere in the middle of that. So I agree that this, I wouldn't in good conscience approve this.
Okay.
So.
Can I just make a comment to both of you on that, or just maybe a thought? Then the question would be, one of the things we've been kind of talking against, I guess, is doing sort of the white with the gray.
Yep.
timber. So I think it's a fine line from this blue up a little bit grayer to where now we're looking at like a charcoal color or something. So I think if we are asking for that, I think it would be good to really, and again, I realize it's not our job to say, here's the color you should use, though we keep kind of coming to that in some of these meetings. So I guess my thinking is that we, maybe even in looking at those swatches or something, we could offer some suggestion as to what that might be. And then I think the other question is, are we also questioning the base color? I mean, does it feel like the blue is kind of tacky because the other is white, or is it just really the blue color feels
No, I
less
think that,
sophisticated?
yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
think the white is
Yeah,
fine. I do.
sure.
You
It's
know,
actually a nice white. I mean,
yeah,
I like-
it's
I like the
neutral
white.
and it's good looking. I don't have an issue there. I don't want to be a brat about it, but the only other thing I will say.
Everybody's got their,
Yeah,
open
but
to page 13.
I just thought it was kind of ironic that on page 13, you
Yeah.
have this image, and and this is what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do think that is successful, because,
the one on the left.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Because
one
of
on the left.
the
I mean, the
black
one on the
charcoal.
right is successful too,
Yeah.
but this was exactly what I was trying to get at
Yeah,
last meeting.
with the-
And I didn't even realize I was doing it, right?
Yeah.
So.
Would you perhaps show this to our paint?
But
so they know- they know what we're
I'm
looking at?
even coming off of that, right? And I'm saying you don't have to do the black timbers with the blue. I'm come off that and said, okay, fine, you can do blue, but just not so, just not as vibrant,
Sure.
like Dodger blue. It literally, to me, the first thing I thought of was Dodger blue, with the white.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I understand that, and I kind of react the same way. But it is a project that's been, in the pipeline for a year.
I know, and I feel
The
bad.
thing that bothers me is because we have a series of examples of projects that were only going to be a one-off, and they're all white.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and not that white isn't a perfectly legitimate historical color in Northern Europe and so forth, but it's not everything white, and it's also a very important building, I think, in the core of the, in the core of the town. I like frankly the colors that have been used there rather than this, but
The thing is that I think Americans are very fearful of really, really strong colors. I mean, in terms of the field being a color, even though we have, like we said, there are style guides in here. This is a bright red building.
Yeah.
But to have the guts to actually
Pull
do
that off,
that,
yeah.
it takes a lot.
yeah.
So,
But that also, because it is unusual, because it is different than other places, that's why you have a parking problem in Solvang. That's why
Correct.
the streets are, through the pandemic, we had,
because it's
the
unique.
because people are looking for something that is authentic.
That's right.
And that's the danger of getting on the slippery slope and, trying to just say again, just this one last time, but I wish there was some way we could get there, because this is better, this is moving in the right direction. I just, if we're building like that, I wish it were closer. I know that they didn't like apparently, I think the big issue, you can correct me, but I think the big issue for the applicant was the three-color palette that we had rather than two-color palette. And I think that got a little more complicated, and I understand that, too.
Stuart, do you think the applicant is, I don't think he's on, right? He's not here and he's not on Zoom?
I'm not
Maz?
sure.
No, he's not.
Okay. I'm not asking you to necessarily speak on his behalf, but just if you have a sense that he or they may be open to darkening that color a little bit more. And if so.
Or deepening it.
Right.
You're
like-
taking it a little bit different direction here with the
Sure.
gray
Yeah,
blue,
if
which
you
is, show him what you're talking about there.
Well, they,
Because my thinking is if we can sort of come to an agreement on that, we could then let it go back to staff, and I think staff, Lori, you probably really know how we feel about it.
Well, that's right.
Kind of like we did with the other.
I think it is, I think it's probably requires special dancing around administrative law, but I think it's even possible for us to say, okay, we're going to reconvene in 2 weeks for a one-item agenda.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it will be, give us 3 options that are acceptable to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the white and the red, blue is white,
When I-
give us 2
when I
other
looked at-
options. And,
Yeah, in there, or
Yeah.
somewhere about,
It's almost like the blue of your binder.
so.
yeah,
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
That's a really good,
I'm sure you're using.
binder blue.
Binder blue.
Are you, Sherwin-Williams?
is that a Dunn Edwards or a Sherman-Williams
they
color?
have
Yeah, right.
Binder
Yeah,
blue.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Rick,
so. Oh, do you have the sander?
we were kind of looking at that binder, the blue
Yeah,
in
is
that
that
binder.
Brian?
that's
Well,
sitting there.
this is one, but you're talking there, though, more of a
Let me see. Can you
blue-gray
see
thing, is that right?
Well,
it? No,
and,
not the binder. Brian, what Brian's
Oh.
been talking about over there.
Your charcoal blue by there.
Here?
the cover,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
We're talking about, you want to get in.
green, but blue-gray, but, I mean, it's still blue, but.
This is the new improved deck that I
See if I ever get to.
Get them close.
right here.
And these,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Maybe even a little, could be a little more color. But,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, to me, and that's just me.
Yeah.
But in these, that sort of range, I don't know.
Those are almost
Wanna go?
sort of,
I would agree with that
Yeah.
range.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Let me make a proposal, it's just
Yeah.
what I said. It feels to me like there's at least 3 no votes right now. And I know the vote that's not here would be a no if she was here. She told me so today. Now, I'm not, there's no proxy votes, and so, she's not voting. But I wonder, to get to where we want to be, which is, something that's good. I wonder, what do you think about an extraordinary meeting in 10 days or 2 weeks for one item, for 1 hour or half an hour or something, asking the applicant to come up with 3 options?
We can definitely do an extraordinary item. I do think that we don't want to drag out this process much
I
longer.
want to do it quickly. I mean, I'd do it a week from now.
But I think it would be, just thinking of getting back to the applicant, I think you should give some general direction here as to
Well, I
what
think
you're
that's
looking
part of the
for.
process that's going on.
Right.
I think that's part of the process going on. You'd be able to get back to them and, excuse me, sir? You would be able to get back to them and,
Well, we have phone and email contact, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, no problem.
and maybe you could, because these guys didn't see it up close.
Right.
yeah.
So what I'm hearing now from all of you is that you are okay with staying with a 2-color palette,
yes.
staying with a, generally speaking, white building, but you're looking for a more sophisticated, more grayish, toned down type of blue, if
So,
that's what the
still be a
applicant
2-color palette
is
for
looking
the
for.
building.
Less vibrant.
And there's no other concerns, the railings are going to be that same color, just so that we don't come back and have.
Are there requirements anywhere in the design standards that say the railings have to be black or anything like that? No,
No.
okay.
And the original proposal was for the railings to be the same color as
Yeah.
the timbers.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a terrific building, and we're delighted that we have somebody interested in developing it. We want to make sure it looks great, but we also have these other standards, and I think right now, I think I got a sense, you did too, that it's tough for that group to do that. And I also have a sense, after talking with city council, at the city council meeting, they don't want to have an appeal. They don't want to mess around in this kitty box.
In lieu of an extra meeting, which I'm happy to go to an extra meeting, by the way, but if that creates more work for everyone, Could we pick, I mean, 3 colors today and say, hey, we would be okay with any one of these? And then, you know, they could say, and if they agree to that in the future, they could just settle up with staff and move on? Or, I mean, I don't, is that, we kind of did that
Sure.
before and it didn't,
I think
I think
that
that's
gets us
acceptable.
to the in quicker.
what do you think about that? Is it?
I'm fine with it.
So we come up
you
with the
know,
options rather than them.
I think that, again, I'm hear Esther in my back of my head saying, please don't pick colors. But
Yeah, I mean, it's not my preference to pick colors, or, you know, maybe it's more a thing of picking an entire chip there that should, you know, I don't know. I mean,
that's why I think the range is good. I think
Yeah.
if we're sort of honing in on a range that,
From Mr. Deputy, it sounds like you want to be in that range. If you want to pick some colors, I'll put them up for him.
Yeah. The other option with the other design review committees is that they will have a appointment of
Yeah, I
2
agree.
people
Yeah.
that are responsible for, basically, you approve it in concept with follow-up review of the colors. And so, and we can bring that to 2 of the members to
Well,
validate.
To do the selection.
Yeah.
But then it still require at the next meeting or whatever.
No, because you've approved it in
Oh,
concept.
we
with
approve and
this
delegate
range.
to them basically
The final approval,
the final approval.
yeah. And that's how the county of Santa Barbara runs their
Sure.
boards.
Yeah, that's kind of a good compromise.
Yeah, that's a good compromise. I think that's great.
Designate ahead of time the 2,
Yeah, we're going to designate them right now.
Right.
I'm looking for volunteers.
I'll do it.
1,
and I'd love for Esther to weigh in on that. I'm almost thinking maybe I would.
we need to delegate it to
Would like to
Esther.
nominate Nestor, yeah. 'cause I feel like-
okay?
I mean, I don't know if we can do that with her out, not being here, but.
Esther, do you have an objection? Hearing none?
I think logistically you can, as long as,
I think
You
Esther
think
would
she's gonna
be
be
more
okay
than
with
willing
it?
to do that. Again, part of it is if it was a small little building on the edge of town, I mean, so forth, it's off of Copenhagen, but it's a major, major building in the heart of town. And it's important that it really show the flag of being a tradition, that standard that's articulated so well in the city council's ordinance.
You like this one or not?
I like both of
Both,
them.
yeah.
so
I don't know if you saw this, Patrick, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Either of them.
either of those, look, this is the white,
Yeah.
obviously, and that's a nice.
Yeah,
Now, this is more of a green, a
It is.
blue-green. I'm
It
only
has
mentioning
green in it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more of a blue, but
Yeah.
with a green sort of.
Brian?
A cooler,
Anything in here, I think is, you know, of the right values.
sure,
That's a little green.
right.
okay.
Here, we're a little.
Esther, this will be the last meeting Esther will miss. I promise you that.
And just to make sure, we'll need to see that wheel and we'll write those
Sure.
colors down.
Yeah,
And then-
that's a good point.
What about the blue binder? I mean, is that, do we feel that's an option to give them as
No,
well?
I think we're fine
I
in
think
that
this is where you
range.
are.
Sure,
Yeah, the differences here.
It's minimal.
Yeah.
And I think this is the direction that's much more compliant with the design standards that we have before us.
and I do think it would still complement with the roof, which is
Absolutely.
important as well.
Is this yours, or
No,
that's his?
That's
For
this, yeah.
your purposes.
Okay, well,
We don't want to keep it, but we,
You're welcome to keep it. I keep them
So
for my
Lori-
clients all the time.
let's turn this around. So, I mean, we're thinking, you know, these are the palettes this looks great, these together, but I think.
The darker is better.
Yeah, and
yeah, toward the darker end of the scale.
I'll write these numbers.
Okay. Uh,
So before a motion, we
Yes.
should give public comment a
Yeah.
chance.
Yes, fine, thank you. Are there any comments from anyone in the room
on this item.
on this item? Are there any comments from anybody in the Zoom room on this item?
There are no comments.
No comments. Okay.
No. Back to the committee if you want to make a motion or more discussion.
I'll accept the motion that Esther and Brian review what?
Final
about
colors,
Options, or three
right?
options, or?
We
You
were
said,
talking about that.
Lori, you said the presentation of three options to the applicant?
These options are the ones we're going to present. He's going to choose one of them,
Okay.
and we'll bring that back to the two appointed people to do final approval.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
Someone want to
Yeah.
make a motion, what she
I'll,
said?
I'll second that.
No, you make the motion.
to
Oh,
You have to repeat all of that.
Okay, so I would motion to present those alternate colors to the applicant. If they agree, they would then come back to our two appointees, Brian and Esther, who would then make final approval on our behalf.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a vote. Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joy Cully,
Aye?
Brian Deputy,
Aye?
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Okay, then the vote carries 4-0.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was a long process, but I think it's important on this project. I mean, this is a key project. It's not a minor project, and because of that, we think it's important we get to the right result rather than a compromised result.
Agreed.
Yep.
The next item I have is, there's a couple sign approval applications before us. Lori, can you direct us to
Sure, you're on page 45.
page
and-
45, yeah?
And we can go to PowerPoint.
Silk Road Kitchen?
Correct. This business is opening up in the Atterdag Square courtyard. They are bringing forth several signs. This is the building, and they are doing renovations to the inside as well as outside. And they're bringing forth their sign plan. If we can go to the next slide. So in the front, the Silk Road Kitchen sign meets the standards, but the interesting thing about this sign is that it's going to be mounted. Each letter is going to be not mounted. It won't be framed or outlined. So that's a lot of work, and this is what they're proposing. The next one. These are the dimensions and the information in regards to the sign, and so next slide.
How thick are the letters they're putting on there? Is it just,
Back.
you know?
The letters are about 8 inches high, the
8 inches
biggest
high,
letter.
Away from the surface of the.
Oh, it's a half an inch.
Half an inch thick. Okay, that's good. So
Yeah.
they're beefy.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not sure, maybe it's.
And then this is the sign in the back. This will be, this faces the parking lot. And the court, there's cottages all around that parking lot. So the signs are facing the parking lot, so you know which business is in each cottage. And this will be a mounted sign, and it is, also has the carving in it.
Great.
Okay. And, yeah, I apologize, the raised letters are a 1/4 inch.
Oh,
Okay. Go
A
ahead.
1/4 inch, okay.
Yeah.
got it.
Now, this sign is the one that we're recommending not
I see
be
that.
approved.
There it is.
And because it doesn't meet the standards for the city. And, there is discussions by the new owner of the courtyard to put together a tenant sign that can be collaborated with all of the tenants rather than individual ones out there. So we recommend approval of the 2 signs for the building, and then working with the owner to put together some other sign that may actually be mounted on the Atterdag water tower feature. And it's important because the line of sight coming down Atterdag is really on this feature. And for those 2 cottages that are off to the side, it'd be really helpful to have a good tenant sign at that location, and we'd rather see that collaboration happen within the area. So our recommendation is to approve the 2 signs that are proposed, not approve the mounted sign, and move forward with the project.
Not approved, which one? This one?
This one, this is
Okay.
the mounted sign,
Okay,
and so that's our recommendation.
okay.
And the applicant is here.
Are there any comments from the public on this item? Okay, either in the room or on Zoom room. Committee discussion?
I was thinking about this earlier, and I understand this has to do with how much frontage and all that. Is there a thought behind, I think I understand why, and the reason is because, as you just described, it changes the line of sight and all that. My original thinking was, is it too much signage? They've got the one on the building and obviously the one in the back. I noticed they don't have an awning, and I was curious, as to why maybe they didn't opt for an awning over the French doors, and then a sign, elsewhere. And my line of thinking was kind of like, well, if they're going to have a sign at the front, maybe they do just an awning or something on the building with, basic words. I think I understand a little bit better, the reasoning behind not having the barrel. And I think I would prefer, as you said, a directory, on the Atterdag Square windmill. I guess what I'm saying is I agree with that, although I did give it some thought as to, how you might remedy that.
As you can see in this particular picture, they have done a lot of work out there. They're putting
Oh,
up
yeah.
lighting. They will have umbrellas in their courtyard area that's been fenced off for their ABC license. And so I think there's going to be a lot of activity there.
Yeah,
So I think this sign right out front
Yeah.
doesn't meet the code.
yeah.
So we will encourage them to work with the owner.
Yeah. Has the owner indicated it, or do we know if the owner's indicated a willingness to do that, or?
The owner's here.
Hi, I'm Mia Hartman. My sister and I recently inherited this property from our father. And we are in complete agreement with Lori's suggestion of having something mounted on the windmill, indicating the tenants of the square.
Great,
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that sign, like right out front.
yeah,
But my sister and I have discussed having a placard with the tenants of the square,
sure.
so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, as long as you're there, or any other comments that you have regarding this application?
Not the sign itself. This is probably off topic, but I don't know if you noticed in some of the photos, the lighting they have mounted outside, that is not consistent with the lighting fixtures in Solvang and within the square itself. So that's something that I would maybe like to have addressed.
And you're talking about the hanging globe lights that go across?
Yes, and I spoke with the applicant yesterday, and he just thinks that everybody loves it and that it was approved, so.
I was going to ask about that, but I didn't think of that as, that's not what's being brought to us
Right,
today.
right.
And I'm assuming that's sort of a
There are some-
code enforcement issue?
There are some other items that he did add to the courtyard that the building department and fire department are looking into,
Okay,
as well as the lighting, again, with the dark sky standards.
sure.
We will need to talk to him.
Okay, so we'll have that in mind, but really we're
Right,
on the
On the
signs.
signs.
Great.
Very good.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I have a comment.
Please.
The only comment I have about the primary sign over the French doors is that it doesn't look consistent with the other signs with the frame. So it's the framing idea, right, which you see on many of the buildings, which is the frame applied to the building and then the lettering on top of the frame, is another nice traditional detail that you see throughout town. So, I'm not, in this case, I'm not sure I'm, again, super passionate about it, but I do think if you're going to have the frame detail, which ironically, it showed it
Yeah.
in the half barrel design. But that kind of nice black frame around the sign itself grounds it a little bit, I think, and will make it stand out a little bit more. So it's more, I don't know, it feels like it's more of a recommendation to really make it readable because sometimes when you do signs like that, that have a more of a, this is a very small font, and it's very thin font, and it's not that legible. And so your eye kind of doesn't see it, but the frame will anchor you so that you'll kind of, it almost attracts your eye to the sign.
Yeah,
So I would recommend, if I was telling them, I would recommend that they frame it on the front of the building, similar to the design that they've shown on the smaller signs, on sign B, rather than going the route of having it floating on the facade.
Lori, do you know the reasoning for that? I'm only asking because you mentioned it being more work and probably
Yeah.
more expense to do the single letters. I agree with Jen. If it were my thing, and it's not, but certainly the border would help it to stand out and look more like a sign than just an element of the building or something. You know,
Ironically, the first application that came in did not have framing around any of the lettering that was shown there, and that was the first question I asked them. is, well, you know, is it, what's happening here?
Right.
And so, as you can see in the sign in the back, it's more of a traditional sign with the framing. And again, the one that they put in the barrel, the one that they currently have at Silk Kitchen, or Silk Road Kitchen is framed. This was their request and that they brought forward. It's unique. There's not very many, you know, individually installed elements. And so, and it was, anyways, I thought it was appropriate for this particular one.
Sure.
And in the space that that sign is going to be in, was, it was, you know, it was appropriate for the space that it's going to be in, rather than putting a big sign in that space. But we can definitely take that recommendation to, or that direction, back to the owner.
I'm happy to hear other comments.
Any other comments?
My comments was until you said it, I didn't really think it. I think it would be fine, and I think it'd probably be fine either way, but what would be cool is not have that outline be dimensional, but that's painted, and then all the letters are standing out. That's a cool kind of way. I would have approved it. Just the dimensional letters are pretty awesome. I mean, I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah, I agree with
So-
that, too.
Yeah.
Either way, it could look, I think, really cool with the painted, you know, shape, and then
Yeah.
dimensional letters off that.
I am happy to defer. I just got it off my chest.
Do you have one comment here before we take action?
I just had a question, because I submitted an application for painting for the buildings. I don't know how the colors of their sign would, you know, work with the colors that we're proposing for the building. So that is something that I
Yeah.
actually have a little
I
concern
think
about.
they'd be fine.
Okay,
The colors that, and that's the next item,
okay.
or an item next.
Coming up.
Coming up. These buildings are the lighter colors that are being proposed. And so I think with the darker letters, those in and of themselves will stand out.
And I'm sort of under the, for me, of the opinion that a new business comes into a building, I've had this experience in my own business, and the building is the color it is, and the sign kind of gets approved independently. Obviously, it's taken into consideration how it looks on the building, and you want some consistency, but it's probably not terribly uncommon to have, you know, a logo or a business theme that it is not exactly the same as the, you know, it
Right.
doesn't always go with. It just so happens that you guys are looking at painting the building around the same time as there's a sign proposal. So in my mind, it's an independent, you know, decision, but certainly one to consider either way.
Thank you.
Sure.
It seems to me that, and I think this is what the planning consultant has said, that what's been submitted is acceptable. But I think we could accept it, and they could do it this way if they chose to, but we'd also give them the sense of the discussion that, you know, members think that it would be enhanced by framing that. Is that?
Yeah, really more recommendation than direction, I would
Yeah,
say, or
that's
just
right.
a suggestion.
We're not going to
Yeah.
make the approval contingent on it. We're not going to make approval contingent on it, but it would be, what they've submitted is approved, or that's, I would suggest we can do that, or we'll make have a motion made to do that, and share with them this information about framing that, and doing it in the way Brian suggested as well, with flat, to really make those letters stand out a little bit more.
And save money at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Is that,
Yeah, sounds,
like,
That sounds good.
so,
go ahead.
I was just going to motion. but-
No, let's do it. Go ahead.
So I think we would motion to accept signs A and B. So A on the front of the building with just recommendation, they might consider a border, but that's not a requirement. Sign B, which is on the back of the building, but not to approve the third sign, which is on the barrel, sign C, and with the recommendation or direction that they work with the owners to come up with a directory on the front of that side of the street to fulfill that business's visual appearance there.
Okay. Second?
That's it.
Second the motion?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now for vote, Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joey Coley,
Aye.
Brian Deputy,
Aye.
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Okay, we have 4-0.
Thank you. Next one is 1666 Copenhagen, the Sock Loft and Only in Solvang signage.
Yes, these signs are being brought forward for two new businesses. They are the Sock Harbor, which will actually be going into the Solvang Children's Shop. And the signs that they're proposing are very similar to the signs that are currently there in dimension and in placement. The second sign in that same building is Only in Solvang, which is a clothing store, and that's replacing the Sock Loft. So you have their sign plans in your packets, and we're recommending approval of these signs.
Okay, thank you. Any,
You want to do public comment first?
oh yeah, good, thank you. Are there any comments from the public on this item? Item B, under sign approval publication 1666 Copenhagen, Sock Loft and Only in Solvang. Any comments from the room or the Zoom room? Apparently not. Any comments from the committee?
Just one on this, it's just the Only in Solvang, it's just poorly positioned. The composition, it's like there's too much space here. I would just, but this is just a recommendation.
Yeah.
It's, I just
Okay.
bump it up and a little more centered.
Okay.
On the, that's my,
I see what you
That's
mean,
fine.
yeah. We could sure pass on that friendly amendment. But the staff is recommending the placement and the character of the signs compliant with the sign ordinance and so forth.
Correct.
Okay? Any other comments?
Go ahead, Jen.
I think it's delightful. I love this sign. It's adorable. I loved it. It made me smile when I saw
Good.
it. I really thought, how adorable. It's cute.
I did too. I have this thing
Yeah.
about.
So you
But-
want it absolutely centered.
Yeah.
And then I thought Sock Harbor was cute too. I honestly, and I love the frames, and I think that that's consistent. And so it's easy for me to say yes to both. I don't have issues with it.
Well, Brian, how about a motion,
A motion
despite the
to,
spacing?
oh, we need a motion for that?
Yes.
We need
Okay.
a motion to approve
Yeah.
to basically, along the lines of the planning consultant, to approve the application as presented.
I then make a motion to approve the application as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joy Colley,
Aye.
Brian Deputy,
Aye.
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 4-0.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we now have another item for 475 Atterdag Square, clean slate tasting paint palette.
Correct. The applicant is bringing forward the repainting of the buildings within the Outer Deck Square. If you could go ahead with the presentation. The building that is identified in the crosshatch was approved for repainting during the hiatus between the different committees. And so that's done. That building also has added a patio, and they have a sign plan for whiskey and rye. Those were all approved late last year. And so now the family is moving forward with renovating the rest of the buildings. And, and also, the building in the front has a tenant called Clean Slate. They've done some work on that space also with a bar area in the patio, and they have their signs are already up. Those were approved last year also. So go ahead. This is the color of the whiskey and rye segment of the building that's been painted. They're doing, renovations, and they're hoping to open soon. Go ahead. This is the back of the building, and where that light fixture is will be a round sign saying whiskey and rye, again, a signage towards the parking area as you go into the courtyard. Go ahead. This is the Clean Slate. That's the sign that was approved for their business. And this particular one will be painted, this will be painted as part of this application. It'll be a dove white, and deep brown is the consistent timbering throughout the whole project.
Oh, I see, good.
Okay. Go ahead. This is one of the cottages on the two that we just talked about, Silk Road Kitchen, and the other one behind it. And the color that they'll have is what's called November Rain. And again, the deep Kavar is the color for the timbers. Go ahead. And the trim. Again, this building will be painted, and this is the one that Silk Road is in. Go ahead. So these are the color swatches. Basically, the deep Kavar is the trim, and then you have November Rain, which is sort of a beigey white, and then you have a more white dove in the area where Clean Slate will be. So you can see throughout the courtyard, there will be a theme of the timbers being all, and the trim being all the same colors, but you'll have some shades of color differences between the buildings, and the tones seem to tie together. And so this is the proposal from the family to clean up the courtyard area and repaint everything out there. So we're bringing this forward to the DRC with a recommendation of approval,
Okay,
and I'm available for any questions.
okay, great.
Thanks, Laura.
Any questions for staff? And then I'll ask for comments from the public. Public, or from the staff, but let me see, any comments from the public, either here in the room or on Zoom? Doesn't appear that way. Okay, comments from the committee?
You want to go first?
No, I don't.
My only comment is, this proposal wins the award for greatest paint names.
Yeah.
Color Deep Caviar, November Rain, and White Dove.
Are those your likes?
I mean, if it comes down to it, right?
Yeah,
Brian, do you have-
That's exhausted my artistic sensibility.
Oh, my gosh.
And I think the other color was like copa or something, you know?
Yeah. The one from the
Yeah.
old fresco building, yeah. So, this is the first of a few of the conversation about the sort of white and the dark or the black timbers. And we're going to keep coming up against this as we discuss, and I think it warrants further discussion. In this case, you know, I took a good long walk around that building, and I see that it's not that far off of what's existing, which I do think has some merit. Sort of interested to hear what others have to say. One thing that I would say, if we decided to move forward with that, is I would like to see some more color in the form of the doors or there aren't any awnings, but at least not on the Silk Road side or the Lucky Dog. I just think that the palette is a little bland, and could use some, you know, some color here and there at least. That's kind of my thinking. I like that there's some variation, and the building in the corner, it's kind of hard to see when you're in there because it's got that lovely new patio, and you sort of have to get up close to see that the color is different. But in the case of some of the other buildings we've talked about over the last couple of months, this is a complex that has multiple buildings, and there's an opportunity there to sort of create a different, you know, kind of like almost a different city sort of scene with maybe multiple colors. And I understand that's kind of what they're going for, but at the same time, trying to remain somewhat consistent. And I'm open to some thoughts from other people if anybody has them.
You want to go next, Brian?
I think that's a great idea. When I think about when this place is going to be really dramatic and beautiful at night with the lights and everything, and that makes me think that the lightness of the buildings is fine, and as well as because they're so small, they don't become these like giant, you know,
Sure.
things. But I love the idea of creating a sort of
In the multiple,
story within that
Sure.
complex that has to do with little bright moments of, you know, a trim or doors or
Sure.
is something like that. I love that idea. I think it's great.
are you the owner?
I am.
Can we engage you in this conversation a bit? You know, because you've been here during some earlier conversations, and one of the things that's frustrating us is the direction to make sure we adhere to some of these historical design
Right.
standards and so forth, and we get white after white after white, and we understand that. And I think, and there's been examples, you know, that, like the Lansby doesn't have any timbering that you can see or anything, and there's a lot of white. And do you have a reaction to this comment?
There was, actually, the designer proposed that the two cottages be a darker, but then my sister prefers it to be the lighter. So it's kind of a conversation that we've had. I'm open to suggestions, but, you know, like I said, the designer, there was one darker color, Iron Trail, which is like super dark, almost black. And that,
Yeah.
we weren't pleased with that.
I see that Lori has the Colors of Copenhagen book out, which we've referred to a number of times in this similar conversations. I mean, just to bring you up to speed, we had this similar conversation about a building on the other part of town. And, you know, part of what we're charged with is adhering to the standard that some colorful, you know, some colors be implemented into the town. And so we're always kind of looking at, like, how can we adhere to that and still, you know, let you do what you'd like to do according to your tastes. So my thinking is that I wouldn't hate the idea of seeing those buildings with a little bit of color. And as I said, you know, maybe it's just the doors or the awnings or something like that. But if you were open even to actual color, you know, on one or two of the buildings, you know, that, I like the idea of that. I don't know how everybody else
Yeah,
feels, but-
one of the applications that we have coming up, it's not perfect in some respects, but is people saying, oh, you want color.
Okay.
Right, yeah, yeah. Or
And
even,
I'm not exactly suggesting that, but what we see in that, historic, traditional Northern European is a variety of colors, you know, that, and white is among them, but white is in the minority.
Right.
And,
So the comment that I made to myself on my sheet when I went through it was, do we really want everything white or off-white? I think when you have really tonal whites like that, you know, the average person won't tell that they're different. They'll probably be confused that in the shadow of the sun, it's probably the
Right,
same
right.
color. So I do agree that it would be really interesting, and it would be really an opportunity to kind of create a little village effect if you think about it in terms
Okay,
of that.
yeah.
I think it
Did I
makes,
get
makes
a
this,
copy of
makes the
this?
property
Unique.
more appealing.
Unique.
More
again,
appealing. I mean,
and,
I think
yeah.
that's sort of the idea, but.
Yeah, I think
And
that
there's some colors that we can use.
like I said earlier, I spent a lot of time on the internet today. And there are some really fantastic images out there. There was cities in northern France, cities in Germany, cities in Copenhagen, but with cladding, with the siding, so you don't feel like there's references out there. So it's not like you necessarily have to just you go to the designer and say, you know, pick whatever. You could direct them in a way that is helpful and meaningful, because they're really looking for that. If you leave it to them, you may end up, you know, with us not, you know, scratching our heads again. But I do think it's a huge opportunity. They're lovely little cottages, and they have such great details. And
yeah.
to paint them white is not to celebrate those details, really. They just kind of are there.
Right, right. No, I get that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I think about, you know, if I was painting a building in Solvang, I would be thinking about how would this look on a puzzle, you know? Because that's the visual I get when I see these scenes that you're talking about in Europe, you know? And,
Yeah,
You know,
it's a good reference.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah. And probably a bunch of white buildings you wouldn't see on a puzzle very often,
Right.
you know?
Very true.
Yeah, I think it does make that area more attractive to people who are looking for that faux.
Experience.
It's on
Northern
a view corridor.
European,
It's on such a beautiful view corridor, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
you're
it really is.
standing at Mission and looking down, oh my God, right? It's like always, it's just your eye goes straight down
Yes.
there. And for it kind of to be white is like really a missed opportunity. The prior building we were talking about, the water wheel, it's harder to see that building, right? From any vantage point. But Atterdag is like, there it is.
Right. Would you be okay with clean slate being,
I
The
don't,
color
I
that
don't,
we
yeah, I don't have a
proposed?
problem with
and then
that.
the cottages,
Yeah.
something a little
Yeah.
different? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want you to spend more money repainting. That's not the intent
Right.
at all.
Right. Okay. Well, wonderful. I will take that suggestion back to my sister and we'll discuss it.
Are-
Thank you.
Let me just ask you a question, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, your name is
Yeah.
Mickey?
Mie.
Mie,
Mie.
okay. It's probably a stupid question to say, like, do you have a timeline on this? It's obviously in everybody's best interest to try to move through these things as quickly as possible, and we don't mean
Right.
to put you through the ringer, but if you, you know, if you are willing to give it a little bit more time, I think, you know, it might benefit you.
Yeah,
As
our
she said, you know.
thing is with Silk Road wanting to open shortly, as
Sure.
well as Whiskey and Rye, we want to have the construction be as minimal as possible.
Yeah, of
And hopefully before they open.
Yeah, sure.
So we may be able to do the same thing that we recommended with the previous one, is if they can come back with a palette
Yeah.
of colors, keeping in mind that the actual timbers would be the same, or the trim
yeah.
would be the same,
Yeah.
but we'd be looking at something in these colors
Sure.
for the two cottages, then we could have the appointed committee
Make a
approve
decision.
that.
Yeah.
I would volunteer for this one. I said I would volunteer for
Could be a
this.
different
Well, I was going to say, it doesn't have to be the
volunteer
same
committee.
committee.
No, it doesn't have.
You and Esther on the,
Jennifer, you
yeah.
were so eloquent, and you have a vision, I would say. Then you do both you guys, and, you know, beautiful
We
You
things.
wanna do it
appreciate,
with me, Joy?
we appreciate your volunteering that. That's a committee of two, and you'll be
Yeah.
given the responsibility of approving on our behalf
Understood the,
that palette, so
Gravity
you're then
of
able
the
to keep
approval.
that moving and,
Okay.
yeah,
and they'll report back to us at the next meeting, but that's something within the next couple of weeks that you
Yeah,
do.
I mean, I certainly could be available almost any time.
I would love it next week because the week after I'm out of town for a
Okay.
week. Yeah.
I will get right on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay?
So.
We'll need to, yeah,
Raise
go
a
ahead.
motion.
So I think the motion was that you are accepting the deep caviar for the trim colors, that you're okay with the white dove for the clean slate side of the building, so there'd be that contrast there, and that the subcommittee will work with the owner to choose colors, or they'll bring forth colors for the 2 cottages.
Right.
Yeah, well, they'll select the colors on
Well-
our behalf. I mean, they'll finalize it.
They'll
Now, I
finalize.
see it, that's how we advance it. So we're going to be accepting their decisions
Correct.
as final.
Sure.
Yep.
Somebody want a motion? Should we?
Motion as
Is that, Brian, I
directed.
think you're not involved in this. Why don't you
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
make the motion? And
Again, now, I'm not used to making motions. I'm a little new to this. So the motion is to have Joy and Jennifer approve recommendations from the owner separately, and then get back to the full committee with recommendations?
Actually, no. I mean, I think they'd work to make recommendations on the other buildings besides Clean Slate,
Right.
and, but
So
they,
do you want me to just restate it, and then he can say?
okay,
Can you
Yes.
do that?
Sorry to put you
fine.
on the
No,
spot
that's
there,
good.
Brian.
Okay, so the trim color throughout the project will be, or throughout the courtyard will be the deep caviar. The clean slate side of the courtyard will be dove white. And the 2 cottages will be brought back to a subcommittee with colors that follow what the applicant proposes to provide some diversity in color.
The motion is what you said.
And additionally, the subcommittee would be Jennifer Dryden Hess and Joy Coley.
yes, thank you for that.
And I add that to the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joy Coley,
Aye.
Brian Deputy,
Aye?
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Passes 4-0.
And just one other point in regards to that courtyard, for Silk Road, they will have olive color umbrellas throughout their courtyard. So there will be some color for that area
Yeah.
also.
And I actually think, I'll just mention this to you, that it looked like they had those umbrellas out already, so,
Yeah, I saw
yeah,
that.
if you want to see what they look like. Thanks,
Okay.
Lori.
Okay, thank you, Lori.
And would I need to make a motion for perhaps a potty break at this point?
Done. I said I would do it, and we're going to do it. 10 minutes.
And then it's all good.
We'll be back in order. And we are on item number B under the Development Project Review. Is that correct? Yeah. 1631 Fur. This is on page 70, I believe. And Lori, why don't you give us a quick briefing of that project?
In your packet, you received the actual, some of the construction plans for this project, because there's a little backstory to this. The property is on First Street. On the site was a 620 square foot cottage. Last year, we issued a building permit for a remodel of that building. And as they started doing the remodel, they realized that it wasn't going to make it, and so they demoed the building. When they demoed the building, and so as part of that work, they had already poured foundations just a foot off of the old foundations, and so this building now has grown to about 825 feet, but technically it's a brand-new building. And so it is a replacement of an old building. It is in the DR20 zone. We are not requiring it to go through a development plan process because it's in the exact same location and basically the same number of bedrooms and everything else, but we're bringing it before you because it is required to come to the DRC. And so this cottage is illustrated in the plans. One of the other elements to this particular cottage is that they've added porches, which is a nice feature. It's basically a small building off of First Street with black and white, and some accent colors in red. And they will be working to start construction as soon as possible on this.
Okay,
So we're recommending approval of this.
okay,
Project is much better than what was there before.
okay, great. Are there any comments regarding this project at 1631 Fur by anybody in the room? How about anybody on Zoom room? Yes, we have one on Zoom room who has a comment. Nancy?
Yes, Nancy Emerson. I'm a resident of Solvang, and I am representing the Save Our Stars Committee of WeWatch, a Sandy Ynez Valley land use and environmental organization. We've been working on outdoor lighting since 2000 and worked with the city on the ordinance that is in effect at this time. The Jones Project does not require compliance with the outdoor lighting ordinance, but I'm very pleased to comment that the fixture that has been chosen is dark sky compliant, and we thank the applicant for that. We have a couple of suggestions regarding the bulb that is used for this fixture. We would like to ask that not more than 1,600 to 1,800 lumens be used by what we assume will be an LED light bulb. That's equivalent to a 100-watt incandescent bulb. And that a Kelvin reading, which is a reading of the warmth of the color of the light, be 3,000 Kelvin or less. The warmer color, which is not that piercing blue white of some cars with LED lights, is good in terms of preventing neighbors from light trespass and animals that roam our town at night from having reproductive and other problems associated with the blue-white light. So that's not a requirement, but we're hoping that you'll help with this work of becoming a dark sky compliant community by doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to a presentation on the dark light at a meeting coming up. Is that right, Lori?
Correct. That was the
Yes.
request.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to do that.
Okay,
I
good.
realize I'm using some technical language that may not be language that everybody has been introduced to.
You know, it's a complicated but important topic, and we appreciate your comments here. And we'll be sure that whatever decision we make, we will share your comments with Mr. Jones and the applicant.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment on the internet or in the room? I think we already asked that. So we'll close the public comment part of this item and move to comments from the committee.
I have no issues with this submittal at all and would be ready to approve it.
Me too.
I have no issues with this submittal at all. I would be ready to approve it.
Okay? Any other comments? I think, if someone makes the motion to approve it, that's fine. I think it would be with the understanding that the information shared by Ms. Emerson is given to the applicant.
Yeah.
With not an order, but an encouragement to consider those in the selection of the lighting. And the appreciation of the work they've already done. Okay.
Applicant is here in the room with us, too.
Yeah, I do have a comment. Well, I as well agree and I approve, but just with the distinguishing statement that we've talked a lot about the white and black scheme, why I felt it was appropriate for this area. This is the DR20, not the village.
Agreed.
It's on a back street. It's on a residential house. And so in my mind, there's not really a lot of reason to disagree with it.
Thank you for saying
Yeah,
that, because
yeah,
it
and
is
that's an
distinguished.
important
Yeah,
comment
yeah.
that should be, we'll
Yeah.
make sure is reflected in the minutes. You have something to add? Please identify yourself.
I'm Zachary Ulrich. I'm the designer
Okay.
for the owner, Alan Jones, which is also here. Are you interested in a presentation at all, or you've heard everything you need?
I think we're fine.
I think we're fine.
I think we're fine.
I'd like
yeah.
to just publicly state we appreciate the night sky compliancy, and we've done our best to
Sure.
comply with that, even though we're not required. And we would proceed with work in the Kelvin rating that she suggested,
Great.
and we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, we appreciate that.
I'll motion to accept the proposal as it is.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joy Coley,
Aye.
Brian Deputy,
Aye.
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Thank
Vote
you so
carries
much.
4-0.
Okay, next item is 1546 Copenhagen Drive. So page 71 in the materials. It's a 3-unit vacation rental. This has been approved by the Planning Commission in last November.
Correct. This project is being brought before you for final review before it is going through their building permit stage right now and plan check. The project was approved by the Planning Commission. It is located on Copenhagen Drive. This project is in an interesting setting where it is zoned DR 20, but it also has the overlay to allow for vacation rentals. And so this is a small infill piece, and the colors that you see presented here are the colors that were reviewed by the Planning Commission. And we are recommending that we move forward with approval of this project. If you want to flip to the next slide. The other elements that the DRC is responsible for is landscaping and lighting. And so this, again, is a very small site, so it does have some perimeter landscaping. There is some trees proposed along Copenhagen where the parking lot is. And then also in the back, I think they've done a good job with the use of the space. The next item. And these are the light fixtures that they're proposing, again, working with the dark side compliant elements. And both the architect and the landscape architect are here and are available to make a presentation and respond to comments. And we're recommending approval for this project.
All right, would you like to step forward and make any comments you like regarding it? Are there? Okay. Okay. Are there any comments by from the public regarding this item relating to 1546 Copenhagen Drive, 3-unit vacation rental? Yes, Ms. Emerson again. Do you have to do something to?
Miss Emerson, you can speak. We cannot hear you. I think you might be on mute.
Applicant was going to be speaking. I'm hopeful the applicant can answer a couple of questions that I have about this project. As you saw, there are 2 dark sky compliant fixtures that have been chosen, and I want to compliment the applicant and his staff for that. The parking lot fixture specifications, which I was able to look at, do not include a bulb. And the specs make a note that it can use up to 100-watt incandescent bulb. However, I assume that an LED will be used. And will it be no more than 1,300 lumens, which is the equivalent of a 75 to 100-watt bulb? I'm interested in the height of the pole for the parking lot light. That's a very important issue in terms of preventing light trespass, both into the building that's being constructed and the neighborhood buildings around it. If the poles are 12 feet or more, you run the risk that the light source is going to be higher than the windows of all the buildings we're talking about. And in that case, you run the risk of light trespass unless the light source is really high up in the light fixture. And that is a possibility for this light fixture, in which case you'd be able to go maybe up to 15 feet without a problem. So I would ask the applicant to talk about what height poles are being proposed and for you to evaluate what height you think is appropriate.
Okay.
And again, I would ask for a Kelvin measure of 3,000 or less. This is not required in the ordinance, but that's because of when the ordinance was written. It's getting old. And so this is a request from We Watch and the Save Our Stars Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me ask the representatives of the applicant to step forward and add what you'd like, but also it would be helpful to respond to Mrs. Emerson's questions or concerns.
Sure, Brian Nelson, the design architect. Yes, the parking lot poles will be 10 feet high, so they're
Okay.
less than the 12 feet. We don't want them high up in the air because it's a small lot. And we'd be glad to get to the 1,300 lumens and less than 3,000 kelvins. That's no problem.
Okay? Anything else, as long as you're up, that special considerations or anything like that?
No, I think this building sets back enough that we have plenty of space in the front for landscaping, and so, and it's in a residential area, but it's 3 units,
Right.
so.
Okay, we appreciate it very
Sure.
much. Thank you. Any other, I should have, before I did.
Oh,
any
that's
other
okay.
questions or?
No, well, we can always make them get back up if we do.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm kidding. I would just like to comment, I love the landscaping plan. Always a fan of drought tolerant, and now, of course, I mean, it's a requirement anyway, but I think it's also just a good way to move forward. Also like the lighting and the synthetic shake roof tiles, awesome. I think that's great.
I agree.
I'd love to see more of that even in Solvang. Back again to the conversation of the white building with the black trim. And I took a walk around there today, and I see that virtually every building in that vicinity has a similar color palette. So that's really the only concerning thing for me. Not terribly concerning because I know the building isn't even built yet, so I realize that, you know, obviously, we're always in the interest of trying to do things as quickly as possible, but I do think that because there's a little bit of time, this warrants kind of a bigger conversation about that. I'd like to see some more color, personally.
Please.
We have an alternate color palette because we knew that question would
Yeah.
come up. So here's the presentation.
You can orally describe it while we look at it.
We would go with a brown trim and the tan colored plaster and a lighter roof than black. So,
Jennifer? Okay.
and all the specs are on there.
Yeah, well, you've heard the conversation
Yeah.
earlier. I mean, that's a concern that we have. We don't want to be like, you know, one trick pony, but I think
Right.
the color issue is one that I think is an important part of it. And I think that, you know, we hope that that's always a consideration by an applicant to, you know, make it even more like a traditional historic Danish or
Right.
Northern European community. And
And that's why I
that
brought that.
requires colors that are not white. And,
Right.
I mean, white's okay, but maybe
so
what
much.
we ought to do is say no more than 25% of the houses are white or something.
So I'm going to say something a little different, so it's probably going to confuse some people, but I believe that when it's a residence, or in this case, even a rental, it needs, I'll use that word, sophisticated. I think that people really want to live in places that are very good looking and not, again, like a billboard and.
Not
bec-
garish.
And not garish, yeah. And because this is actually it borders the residential areas, I live a stone's throw from there. I think it should stay white. And I think to go to the brown tones just remind me of the whole Mediterranean stucco coloring thing, which was not necessarily that successful. So I actually like it just being simple, and it's a residence, and it's attractive, and it won't attract too much attention. In this case, you don't want necessarily tourists trying to
Right.
go figure out if it's something more interesting than a residence.
Place to live, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, I think it's actually very attractive, and I would leave it just the way it is.
Actually, I appreciate that because in all of this, I was sort of forgetting about this being in the DR20 versus being in the village. And I hate to shoot down your samples that you brought. You know, one of the comments I made in a prior meeting was it feels like the white and black are taking over what used to be the tan and brown scheme. And when you look around Solvang, it's, you know, there's so many buildings and in that area that are tan and brown. That feels like sort of the 80s or 90s version of you know, the older architecture of Europe. So I actually kind of agree with you that I like this better than that, actually. And now that I'm thinking in terms of that being very much like I said about the Fir Avenue property, you're right, it's not in the village, and probably deserves, you know, a different distinguishing reasoning. So.
We can
my
go
mind
either way.
changed. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I can go either way too, except this is a vacation rental.
Right.
So people are coming here for the look.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, so
True.
and we stayed in a half-timbered, whatever.
true.
But
Which it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah,
I know that's half-timbered, but I mean, that's all. I just,
Yeah.
it is a vacation rental, not a residence.
The
like
thing
like the
is-
place on,
The thing is,
Yeah.
if it was gonna be an Instagram moment, it would have more detail to it. And because it's pretty simplistic and it follows the sort of the bare the bare minimum of that guideline, it's not an Instagram moment. It's a nice building, but it's not like, oh my gosh, we stayed in this really quaint, cool little place that had shutters and it had window boxes and it had this, that, and the other, and it becomes that, right? So if this is the design, it's better that it kind of just sits there nicely and it's an attractive unit and it, but it's not like, oh my God, what's the color at the end of the street? Should we go find out what's happening
yeah.
down there?
yeah, I understand.
That's my view, obviously.
It's fascinating.
I understand. Any other comments here? Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve it as submitted with the revisions to the lighting of the parking lot stanchion and bulb.
I'll second that.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Do a roll call vote. Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joy Coley,
Aye.
Brian Deputy,
Aye?
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Thanks for your
Thank
extra
you.
effort.
Yeah,
to present that to us. We appreciate that very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, I was going to mention this on this project. Let me see. On the I guess it's the next one, 539 Alisell Road, which is the 11-unit condo.
This is our last one, right?
This is the last one. Yeah, it is, and this is, a lot more than I thought we'd have. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We have, it's a small deal, and I didn't mention it at the time we reviewed the agenda. It says this was approved by the Planning Commission on November 2nd, 2021. So, but it was in 2020. And I guess it was also reviewed by the old bar, or maybe it was it bar, or was it
Yeah.
the branding and design?
This project did not get reviewed by either.
Oh, okay. Oh, it said it was reviewed by the old bar for colors and materials.
I apologize for that. It was reviewed by what was called the Development Review Committee,
Okay,
which was the old DRC. We don't use that terminology anymore.
You mean branding and design committee?
No, this was actually when we have all the departments get together, and that's the Development
Oh.
Review Committee.
okay,
And so that's where there was a little
yeah.
confusion. there.
Okay, good. Okay, that's just,
Yeah.
that isn't accurate as described, and we'll just let the minutes note that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lori, do you want to give us a
Sure, and actually,
review of 539 Alisell Road?
thank you. I'd like to do a little backstory on this, and if you could put up, it's not it's the item on my PowerPoint that, let me see, sorry. Oh, can you go to the,
Is it on what item?
it's on the flash drive. I need to pull up
Okay.
something else.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hold that up just 1 second.
This project had, went through several staff reviews before I joined the city. And there were several proposals for architectural design of the project. And the applicant worked diligently with previous staff members to bring forth different design elements. And do you see it?
I think so, site lighting cut sheets.
No.
Hit the X.
just one moment. So the previous elevations were were white and brown, white and black, white and gray. And there was also other features on the project. One of them came forth with actually brickwork on the bottom story and then colors above that. And so the last effort was to bring forth color. And this is what went to the Planning Commission and went through the review bodies and ended up getting approved by the Planning Commission. They did really like the color combinations on that block because, again, with the other varieties of colors, this would really stand out. The one element that, since we now have the DRC, is that the cross timbers are white as an accent. So we brought this project before you to look at colors, lighting, and landscaping. And so those are the elements that you have in your package. And so the applicant and their architect is available to discuss this. And we, again, are bringing forth a project that didn't have the opportunity to go through previous review bodies, but did have the Planning Commission recommendation. And so we're recommending that this project move forward as proposed by the applicant.
Okay.
And they are in plan check for their building plans.
Okay, okay, good. I understand that. All right. Is the, any public comment on that? Yes. Yes, Mrs. Emerson, proceed, please. Are you on?
You're muted again.
I'm just needed to unmute. This is a more complicated project in terms of lighting. There are actually 5 different fixtures included in the project. I appreciated the applicant forwarding to Lori today the specs on these lights. The first fixture is Lithonia, that's the company Bullard light, and usually these are used for pathway lighting. I'm not quite sure how the applicant is planning to use any of these lights because this information wasn't available when I looked at the plans where you get detail about where different kinds of lights are located. It looks like it's available in 2700 Kelvin or 3000, but what was outlined in red on the specs was a 5000 Kelvin version, and I would ask that it be 2700 or 3000, please. And there, again, it wasn't possible to determine just how many lumens were going to be proposed. But I would hope that it would be under 100 watt incandescent equivalent. I think it would be good for the Bullard to be more like 750 to 900 lumens if possible, which is like a 60 watt bulb. And then the next one is called a canal millium stretch, and it looks kind of like those old fluorescent bulbs that we used to have, but it's LED, and you get tube lighting in LED. Again, I'm not quite sure where the applicant is going to be using this. It is not dark sky compliant, so I hope it's somewhere under the building or, you know, some place that's covered for use of it. And again, it comes in a 3000 Kelvin version, but it looked like they might have selected 4,000 Kelvin. And so we need just a little more information from the applicant on this particular product. The third light fixture is Lithonia, that's again a firm, parking lot light fixture. It's a fully shielded directional fixture, and it's dark sky compliant depending on the pole height. And as you may have noticed, this project does back up to some residential housing as well as sitting between a little shopping center and the People Helping People building, where they're not going to be so worried about the lighting. So again, I would like to see the parking light fixtures have pole height that's more like the 10 that was suggested for the previous project than something taller. My memory is that there is a back fence separating this from the other residential areas, and I think it would be good to look at the height of that fence in terms of the poles. This one comes in 3,000 Kelvin, but it looks like they might have selected 4,000. And I wondered if sounds like they may have a dimmable feature, which is wonderful when used because it keeps light in a parking lot but reduces it during the hours when people aren't moving around so much. The fourth fixture is an evergreen lighting wall fixture. It's what we call an architectural feature on the building. It seems to be dark sky compliant. It comes in 3,000 and 2,700 K. Lower would be better probably because the fixture obviously is trying to give the feeling of warmth. It has glass in it that is translucent and is a warm color. And again, no more than 2,000 lumens, if possible, I would think, on that particular feature. The final fixture is a Bega ceiling mounted downlight. Interestingly, this is a Carpinteria firm. It's used often for passageways and doorways, possibly other places in this project. It looks to be dark sky compliant, and it looks like it's going to use 301 lumens, which is good, and 3,000 Kelvin for the warmth reading. And so to me, it looks like this fixture should be fine without further questioning.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your diligent review of this and sharing your findings with us on that. And we will share that with the applicant.
We have both the applicant and their architect on
Oh, good.
Zoom.
I didn't see, I had made a note regarding both the lighting and the roof materials that I didn't see those specifically in the plans besides on the main, main image. There's some depictions, but I don't see a sample of, unless I'm missing it.
It's in there.
Is it?
Yeah. There's,
Here, it's this.
well, this is the roof material here.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Was there, and then the lighting that she was just talking about?
The lighting was not included in that
Okay,
packet.
okay.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
have a question about this.
Thank you.
This has been approved by the planning commission.
Correct.
In making its decision to approve a project at this stage, does it look at lighting?
It did look at lighting, not to the detail that is being brought forward tonight, because they don't have the actual construction plans at that time. So it did have it in the elevations, there were some identified in the landscaping plans, and so, but now we're actually plan checking and.
Yeah, I just want to make sure there's no overlap. I mean, that we are complementary, but not in conflict.
And this,
Where they're approving something that we don't agree with or vice versa.
right, and this reflects how we're going to be proceeding in the future. Again, you're coming in at the end of this particular project. As we have new projects coming forward, we will be bringing them forward to the DRC for conceptual review. The Planning Commission will then act, and your recommendation will be an influence on the project. Then we will take it to the Planning Commission for their approvals. Then the applicant has a set of conditions and goes to the architect to do the final development plans. And then your role at the end is to say, did they provide responses to both your direction, Planning Commission direction, and implemented those in the details that they're bringing forth in the final architectural plans? That would include elevations, landscaping, lighting, colors, materials.
Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing from the architect and the applicant are online with us, because obviously one of the issues that we have, and it's anticipated in your briefing, is you've asked the applicant to provide alternative illustration to reflect, that is regarding the color of the half timbers.
And based on the discussion that we had with the applicant throughout the last week, they stand by this proposal. They think that after the work that they have done over the last year and a half, and the alterations that they've made to the plans, they think this is something that they'd like to move forward with and was approved by the Planning Commission. And so they did not bring forth any other alternatives. And so they'll be glad.
When the Planning Commission makes an approval, again, this is one of these things I'm trying to tease out, and maybe because there was a void in this committee, do they approve colors?
They approved the elevations as is. And the comment that I made to the applicant, it was reflective of the discussions that we've had over the last 3 meetings with the DRC in regards to how the timbers look. So that was the discussion I had preparing them for this meeting. This is a different project, it's a different location, and it does have history, and the applicant likes what they got approved, so
Sure.
this
I
is what
appreciate
they're
that.
bringing forward.
If the representatives of the applicant are online, I welcome you and am anxious to hear any, comments you have regarding the proposal before us, and in particular, the comments regarding, the half timbering. It's obviously, that's one of the key issues. That's one of the areas really where there's quite a bit of clarity in the design standards that we've been given. They're dated and they'll be updated. But this goes exactly the opposite way from what the design standards require, or at least suggest are preferred, strongly preferred. I see somebody there. I can't read. Is that Eric?
It is. Hello. I am the representative of the developer and one of the developers, so thank you very much. Be happy to answer that question for you. Is when we started this project, we had the design standards in hand. We read them thoroughly through, and we designed a project around that. And when we had our first submittal to the city, it reflected dark timbers and a white building. As Lori pointed out earlier, we got direct feedback from the city that they were looking to see something not like that and something with a little bit more color. So we had a second submittal, which had dark timbers and the brick design and some color. The city came back to us again and said, that's not really quite what we're looking for. And so I went back and forth with the city with numerous elevation drawings with our architect. These were not official submittals at this point because I did not want to make a third official submittal. You know, each one of these costs us money and time.
I understand.
And so I met with the city and we put pictures down on the ground, and we had pictures downloaded from the internet of buildings in Copenhagen. There's a really famous bay out there, which the buildings are oranges and blues and greens and vibrant and colorful. And when we gave that sample to the city, they said, yeah, that's kind of what we're looking for. And that became our third official submittal, which then became the project that went to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission liked the colors and the life and the vibrancy of the building, and that's what they approved.
Okay,
And I think for us to go back and undo that and go back to what our first submittal was, the one that got pushed back to us,
yeah,
I don't think it's appropriate, and it's not something that I want to do.
I understand that. I mean, I think that's an understandable place to be, from what I know. Any other comments you have regarding, you know, that could help us in the disposition of this matter?
I think the city, I've had a great working relationship with the city. We've really been cooperative back and forth and come to a project that I think looks really nice.
Yeah, it
I'd
does
love
look,
to do
to me, it looks
anything we
nice.
can
Any,
to
are there
continue
questions?
that.
Excuse me, I'll see if any of my colleagues have questions regarding the project.
I don't really have any questions at this time. I may have comments, but that can wait.
Okay,
No questions.
okay. Are there other people from the public, there's no one here in this room, but any other people from the public online that want to make any comments? Okay, then I'll turn to the members of the committee for their comments regarding this.
So I feel awful about the process that they've been through, and I completely hear the frustration and acknowledge that that is a really tough place to be. And this one's really hard because you just heard me say, I think, about how I thought residential should be a little less vibrant. And so it's really hard for me because I'm looking at something that's residence that's super vibrant, and then it has white timbers. So, and I don't want to necessarily create like a hornet's nest of a problem for you. I'm just going to tell you what I wrote when I looked at it today, and just share that. I thought, and again, this project is what started me down the rabbit hole, really, because I really wanted it to be, again, just if it was going to go this route, what would it be in terms of really beautiful, successful building that people would be really proud to say they lived in. I am a little concerned. I can't tell from the swatches on the digital printouts, like, you know, what tone of blue, what tone of yellow. But that aside, it sort of feels like with the warm roof and the very cool tones of the paint and the white timbers, that it could be better, perhaps, if you went one of two ways, in my mind. One would be that the timbers match the roof, and you just went with that. Or the tile on the roof changed to a cool slate, and the timbers were then a cooler, darker accent color. So that is what I wrote. And that was, to me, trying to stay consistent with some of the other things. But again, knowing that this was an exception to what I feel about residents.
Understand.
So just be clear.
I would say, for me, maybe taking away, just in general, my personal opinion about it for a minute, I think this comes back to the real question of what we're charged with, you know, what we're charged with, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but based on the guidelines. And the question is, in the DR20, there aren't really specific guidelines for the DR20, but there are some very basic multiple family residential area recommendations at the end of the design guidelines. I think we're left to assume that we're taking the guidelines that are in the first part of the book and kind of somewhat applying them here, but there's a lot less information here. So I think the question for me isn't so much how I feel, I mean, obviously it's a little bit how I feel about this. I actually like the way this looks. I think the question is do we need to adhere to that on the half timbers in that zone? And I'm not saying any of you have the answer to that, but that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Right.
So my personal opinion aside, can we approve this based on what the guidelines are saying for that particular zone? That's
Okay,
sort of where I'm at.
any comment?
My comments would just be personal and subjective. I mean, it's definitely not my taste. And I think in terms of the appropriateness and authenticity of the timbers being white as opposed to a contrasting darker color, it's, yeah, my personal opinion is I'm not fond of it. Personally, but that doesn't mean that all the other considerations aren't more important than just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I feel sort of the same way. I feel like, boy, we have this, one thing that's pretty clear in the design standards is that how the half timbering is to be darker than the, than the background, or the stucco, or whatever it is. I like the design of the building. I like the shape, I like the roof line, which is, if you squint, it almost looks thatched. I like the windows, and I appreciate the efforts you've made on the design. My view is, given the fact that you've worked with the city, you've worked with the planning commission, a number of iterations, that even though it's not something I don't believe we would recommend and basically pass, if this was your first, trip through the maze. But it's not. You've been trying to get the approval here for some time, and I'm in a position to say, to accept the recommendation of the staff, citing the fact that you've been working on this for some time, recognizing that it's not the center of the city, that it's not, a place for lots of tourist traffic or anything like that, not even part-time vacation rental.
Right.
These are residences. Again, I wish it was a different color. I wish they were darker. That's the half timbers. They don't have to be black or dark brown, but definitely should have a darker hue than, but I'm willing to accept it exactly as it's submitted right here. That's where I am. So that's, and for those reasons. And it's, again, kind of holding my nose to do that, but that's where I am. Yeah, please, yeah.
I did make a note here, but earlier in the evening, because of course, I think we're all doing the same thing. As soon as I saw this, I thought, oh, shoot, those timbers, we're going to have that conversation. I didn't really come up with a resolution in my head earlier, and then I made a note, and my note is, gray, maybe a shade darker than the base color. But I couldn't reconcile in my head the roof with the gray timbers. Although the staircase has this kind of darker color, and I did make a note about, could the timbers be that darker color, and then maybe that would go with the roof. But I think I'm in agreement with Patrick, though I think that the applicant could take some of that into consideration. It's just a change of paint color versus a whole new proposal. I think it's pretty clear that we would prefer a darker color, but I would be willing to move forward without that.
Okay,
I think that's where I'm at.
okay. Is there a motion?
Just one more
Please.
thing, and I do understand the representative of the developer having gone through the ringer and all that kind of stuff. And I understand that these things, cost money. Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
Question?
Of course.
Because this is not built yet, it's not sitting there waiting with painters ready to paint, right? It's not built, right?
That's great. It's in plan check with the city right now.
Okay.
In the plan check. I think we're in our second submittal or about to have our second submittal.
Okay, but in terms of the look and what we consider, how difficult would it be to, maybe just do one more, like even a rough and quick rendering with the timbers maybe in the staircase color or something like that, just to have a look at?
It's just money. I mean, but to what end? I mean, I'll be honest, I really
What I'm
mind
worried
having
about is that
darker timbers.
we have to also consider that there are neighbors around, and they might come back to us and say, how could you approve this eyesore in my neighborhood? And such kinds of things, because we have responsibility to the people that live in our community too, so.
No, I mean, all the neighbors were noticed when we went to the planning commission. But what I was saying is I'm not opposed to darker timbers. I'm not opposed to that at all. I think it might actually look okay. What I don't want to do is have to open up my project again. When I came into this meeting, I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know what the DRC was going to say. But, I think it's just paint as far as actual construction goes.
That
That
is what we're talking about.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This does not reopen the whole
No.
project.
But I don't want to have to come back to this DRC time and time again, having my architects draft up new elevations over and over.
I mean, we don't want you to. What we're asking, or I'm asking, is can someone take a printout of the rendering, neatly put in, color into the white, just so that we could see it and be able to maybe feel more comfortable about this from a visual perspective. That's all I'm saying, not getting a $2,000 rendering redone. And, that's what I'm kind of asking is, how hard would it be?
Yeah, or the other way, I mean, you know what the design guidelines say that we're required to do. What we talked about earlier today, I'm not sure you were on the meeting at that time, was asking, in the future, new applicants to explain what they're proposing, from not only design, but a color palette. Why that's consistent with the design standards that we're expected to enforce, and that is this, Northern European, Danish traditional, historic model, which those design standards say include, taft timbers that are darker, not all black necessarily, not even wood colored necessarily, but that's what it says, and that's how they've kind of defined this requirement of the Northern European, Danish historical traditional standard. And, we're going to ask future applicants to say how their proposal is consistent with that standard that's been imposed on us to implement or to enforce, I guess. And, it would be hard if you were to start over today for you to say, well, white reflects that because, I don't know. Like you say, though, you saw the pictures of Copenhagen, and there's a wide variety of colors used for the
Field.
and also some variation in the half timbering as well. And that's in our design standards. I think, again, I'm sympathetic to the fact, though, that you've been working through this, you've been incurring costs. And like I say, it's only paint, and, 3 years from now, if we say, man, we'll pass a kitty around and repaint the half timbers. But I don't know, I'm
Can I suggest-
sympathetic to the challenges of getting this process through the city. The city's, hopefully, we're looking at ways in which we can make it more friendly for applicants to run the gauntlet.
Well, can I suggest this, perhaps? Again, I want to reiterate that I'm not married to the white timbers, and when you go home tonight, it's at Nyhaven Point is in port in Copenhagen is what kind of drove the theme here, and that's NYHAVN. It's a very famous port in Copenhagen, and it's all colorful buildings. And actually, I'm looking at it right now. They actually all have white timbers, and I think that maybe that's where the motivation came from. But if I could, what I would like to do is, if we could respect what the Planning Commission did now, I will work with my architect to come up with some additional elevations. And if, the colors, the darker works, I could come back and request a change to the darker color.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, I think that's sounds like a direction for some progress on this, recognizing that the Planning Commission has approved what's in front of us, and recognizing your willingness to continue to explore the half timbering without, new renderings or anything, but we just have to, figure out what that would look like if it was the same color as the roof, for example.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are the elevations, the elevations obviously help us envision things clearly, but are they really a requirement? And if it is such a cost, is it acceptable for them to just come back with paint color samples?
Sure.
Obviously, again, the rendering helps with the visual, so we certainly encourage that. But if it's a matter of, man, you've got to spend hours with your architect and have him redo and all that stuff,
I don't need a rendering.
I was going to say, I'd be happy with just seeing some paint chips,
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fine for me.
Yeah, but you've been approved by, we can approve, or what perhaps is a solution, is we could approve this with the understanding that you'd bring back some possible candidates of alternatives that may be darker, a little more consistent with the general standards. I appreciate, though, there are, one of the arguments, like you say, that we want people to be able to, applicants to be able to explain why their proposal is consistent with that standard. You have pictures of Copenhagen with buildings that are vintage, and it shows the white timbers. I'm going, well,
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I did some research and tried to find white half timbers. I couldn't find any. I found one building that had some lighter colored timbers, which I think were actually just really faded from the sun or something. So I'm interested, I'm going to look this.
I had the same
yeah,
experience.
if you have a link or something, you'd share it with Lori or whatever, that'd be interesting on the way. But in the meantime, my hope is that we'd be able to approve the project today as it was approved by the Planning Commission, with an understanding that we're going to continue to explore the half-timbered look. And I know that doesn't mean, and if you say, no, we've looked and we're going to insist, then that's the way it's going to be. Understood, or?
That works for me.
So then I guess the motion would be to approve the plan as is with the exception of the color of the half timbers, which we would ask the applicant to come back with some other paint colors. If they can do a rendering, great, but we would be happy with paint samples.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. That was not what my understanding was.
Yeah, that wasn't what I said
I'm
exactly
sorry.
either. I was
Sorry.
proving the project as it is now,
Got it.
including the white half timber,
Okay.
but with an expectation that they would come back with us in a certain time period, but maybe by the next meeting or something, with the swatches, to say, well, and options that you think are they're going to be easy to do. It doesn't require, I'm not asking for any more money or renderings or anything like that. But you know, if you think you see options, you say, man, this is the only option we have, then that's fine. But, you know, we'd be happier if there was one that was more consistent with the design standards that are in front of us. And they speak very clearly. You've read those, I guess, or seen them. You know, they speak very clearly about the half timbering being dark wood colored, wood stained colors,
I'm happy to do that, yes.
okay?
So
Is
can
that
you
the
clarify
motion?
the-
Yeah, I need clarification now.
the motion?
Okay.
One of us can-
Well, we would, as you said, we would approve the project as approved by the planning commission and submitted to us.
Okay.
And, but with a request, maybe even subject to a request, that they present, perhaps as early as our next meeting, options for the half timbered that, if they have options that are acceptable to them to this. I think we'd like you to explore that, without incurring additional cost. It wouldn't, I assume, incur additional cost, but that, we have a, as Brian said, you know, people are, you know, expecting us to follow the design standards, and I think, while there may be examples we haven't seen yet, we think that it's a great-looking building, and it serves a great function for us in the town. It's a great location. The white timbers is at variance with the standard. But we recognize that you've already run a gauntlet or two for us. And I think that's part, if this was a case of first impression, I think the group would deny it. But it's not a case of first impression. It's been approved by the planning commission. And worked with staff, and based on that, I'm ready to do that, but, okay, do we?
Yeah, I understand, I think I
I'm sorry.
understand. Jen, do you have anything to add to that, or you?
No.
So then the motion is to accept the plan as recommended by staff, with the hope that the applicant would consider some darker colors for the timbers, and come back to share those with us. And then, but either way, they can move forward with the plan as it is. Does that
Yeah,
sound right?
okay.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Can I ask a procedural?
Sure.
Question? How many votes do we need to pass that motion?
3.
3? Okay.
Let me make a proposal. We're all interested in trying to help you out with getting through this as quickly as possible and painlessly. And we're also trying to compromise with each other on our own feelings about it. What if we said, back to the original, because I hear what Patrick's saying, but it does sort of feel confusing a little bit to say, like, we're approving it, but we want you to
Yeah.
come back. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so what if we said, we approve the plan as it is, except for the color of the half timbers. You can move forward. I mean, you're not going to be painting the building right away anyway, because it's not even built yet. But you can have approval on the colors of the building, the background, and then if you could just come back with some half timber colors, and we could make that a separate agenda item to approve later. We don't need renderings necessarily, just paint chip colors, and we could do that at any future meeting. Would that be kind of a compromise?
I'd vote for that.
I would vote for that.
I think Eric's muted, or I don't know if he's
I
commenting.
think he's talking.
Oh, he's talking.
talking.
Sorry. Sorry, I thought you were commenting on what we
Yeah.
were saying.
I would
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay, so then I will make a motion to accept the plan as is, with the exception of the color of the half timbers. So we would ask the applicant to come back to a future meeting with some other color samples for the half timbers, and then we can revisit. And we don't necessarily need renderings per se, but just even some paint chip colors.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Patrick Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Joy Coley,
Aye?
Brian Deputy,
Aye?
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Aye.
Okay, the vote is 4-0.
And we
Thank you,
will
Eric.
also, work with the applicant on the dark sky compliant lighting.
Okay.
Yes,
I
you-
do have a question, though, if you don't mind. You're overturning a planning commission decision. Do I need to go back to the planning commission if we do end up changing these colors?
No, I can address that. So the only jurisdiction the DRC has at this point is over the paint, the lighting, and the landscaping. It does not need, if the DRC makes a change to the color scheme, it does not need to go back to the planning commission.
Yeah, but my understanding is the DRC makes recommendations to the planning commission and the planning commission approves the colors.
The DRC is the final review of the colors. And in this case, when it went to the planning commission, it was made clear to the planning commission in the staff report that these aspects would be reviewed by a committee like DRC once a committee was established.
I don't think that was the case, but
They do
I'll
have the,
look further into that. But I will bring the paint samples for the half timbering, but the issue of DRC was brought up at the planning commission by a planning commissioner. And it was addressed. I mean, we'd have to go back and look at the record there.
well, generally speaking, I'm just going to address that to the DRC. There is a catch-all provision. I have checked with our city attorney team that either by planning commission or planning director direction, colors are within your jurisdiction and can be addressed as a question to you regardless and after planning commission approval. So it is within your jurisdiction to make this kind of motion.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
thank you, Eric.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your
Thank
time tonight, and we'll look forward to working with you. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw it too and knew that it was going to be an issue. Update of general plan, design element, and general plan advisory committee. I know Jennifer's been there. I guess you attended the first meeting, and
I did.
you ran it.
Yes. So I can give just, once again, to give everybody an overview of where we are in the general plan update. Just keep reminding where we are and where we're going. We have had the first two workshops, and we have collected lots of input from the community. That input has now been put together by the consultants, and they have submitted it to staff. So we at staff level are reviewing that input. They have provided us with both an analysis of it and actually the raw comments so that everybody has an opportunity to read through the specific comments that have been submitted if they so desire. It will also be available online. So that has occurred. We also have completed the existing conditions workbook. So that's a workbook that documents where we are today, essentially. And that is a book that will be reviewed by the GPAC at a next meeting. We are still in stage 2, but we are moving towards the stage 3, which will be the vision guiding principles and then alternative solutions. I would like to pull up a slide and just show everybody, and if you could go to slide 4 of the GPAC committee. Let's go to slide 4. There you go. Just in case you haven't heard yet of who is on the GPAC committee, and once again reminding you who it is. So GPAC committee was formed not by the vote of the council. This is all volunteers who volunteer and were essentially became the GPAC committee. That is why we don't have a Brown Act requirement, and the GPAC can have a much more free-flowing conversations as the 15 of them meet over time. Their purpose is really to provide the connection for the consultant between the professional running of the general plan update and the specific Solvang perspective and knowledge from here, from the community, and what needs to be addressed. So from council, we had 2 council members that volunteered. That is Councilmember Infanti and Mayor Pro Tem Arona. For Planning Commission, we have Joy Jamieson and Aaron Peterson, and then from this committee, we have Esther Jacobson Bates and Jennifer Dryden Hess, and they both attended the committee yesterday, which was the first one. From the community members, we have Dennis Beebe, Elizabeth Breen, Constance Cody, Lansing Duncan, Max Henberg, Kim Jensen, Linda Johansson, Richard Longoria, and Jennifer Sony. So it's pretty good representation there and a good mix of lots of residents and business owners who have been in the community for a fairly substantial long time and are very vested in it. So they are presented with a big task of representing the Solvang community over the next year and a half that it will still take to complete the process. So the GPAC met yesterday for the first time, and everybody got introduced to everybody else on the team. We had a fairly good first introductory meeting with some robust discussion. One of the first tasks that they will be doing is reviewing the existing conditions in more detail. And there's going to be some formal meetings and some less formal meetings. So if we could actually go to slide, let's see, slide 8. I'd like to just show the timeline. If you can maybe click forward so they can see all the, yeah, there you go. So project initiation was phase 1 that started in December. Existing condition and trends is the second stage, which is still going through August 21st. So the little items in red indicates that that will be a formal GPAC meeting that GPAC will be reviewing. So the first one there, you see the existing conditions workbook, and then the next one will be vision and guiding principles. In phase 3, which is when the next workshop will occur, there will be the conversations based on the vision and where we are as to what are the alternatives that can get you to your vision from where we are. So that will be a fairly robust conversation in phase 3. So GPAC will be involved in reviewing the alternative concepts, alternatives report, and the fiscal analysis. And then in phase 4 is the actual preparation of the general plan. So there will be specific meetings 6 through 10 for the draft of the general plan review by the GPAC. As I said, these are the formal meetings where we'll have, there's an item actually on the agenda for the city council to consider on Monday, whether they want to extend the scope and have the consultant actually continuously run these official meetings with the GPAC, which are more technical. But then I think this GPAC has definitely proven itself to be rather lively yesterday. And I think they will be more involved than that. So they will also have some more natural, because it's not a Brown Act committee, they will have more natural, conversation just either with the whole group or subgroups to continuously discuss and feed into the general plan development, which I think is good. And then
They're not open to the public.
they are, they can be. So, there may be some meetings where there might be, they don't have to be, but
So, are media excluded?
Generally speaking, yesterday it was a private setting. So, because there is no,
Just asking, that's all.
there is no requirement. But the GPAC at certain points when, depending on the discussion, there may be some type of items where the GPAC might want to seek, additional participation from the public, and we just lost our slide, but that's okay. So that is the role of the GPAC, and with that process, of course, there's also a role for this specific committee, and your 2 representatives will be coming back to you with recommendations and keeping you up to date on the process. There's the required elements. It's a comprehensive general plan update, and there's also the not required elements, one of which is the design element, which is what you all are very much interested in. So anything that has to do with design element will always be coming to the DRC as we develop these plans. So as the next step, the vision and guiding principles, that is something that will be coming first to GPAC at their next official meeting about a month from now, which will be a discussion based on everything that we've seen at the existing conditions and everything we have seen from the community input, and then GPAC's own knowledge of the community will go into recommendations for the vision and guiding principles. Part of that will be the discussion of design element. And then that item will come to you all for review and recommendations, which will follow by a joint meeting of the City Council and the Planning Commission.
So I have a question on that. So those items that we do bring back, those will be they'll be agenda items for discussion in our.
Correct.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
interesting.
And on the elements that this particular committee doesn't have a specific jurisdiction, you are all very much welcome to participate in all of the activities for general plan, just as individuals as well.
Sure.
So,
Good. Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Ms. Van Broeken?
I have a lot of homework. I could set that up.
Okay.
and there is, if you're interested, there is lots of information now added to the website. There's the existing conditions workbook that you can look up, and there's also kind of a cool tool called the interactive maps
Story
or
map.
story maps. Thank you.
Story mapping was really cool. It was. So I would say if you go on the website and you click in there, it's
Interesting.
yeah, some
Okay.
worthwhile time could be spent there.
You basically click into a map and it can take you exactly to where it is, and it's all divided by different aspects of the
Okay.
general plan.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions, comments? Any committee member comments?
Actually, on that, sorry, oops, on the subject of that, just so I'm clear, as this develops, and I'm just talking about the portion about design standards, and if we have suggestions, thoughts, comments on design standards, obviously, it's okay to bring it up in a meeting, and really, that's really the only place to bring it up is in the meeting, I'm assuming. If I had a suggestion, because Jennifer is our representative, is it appropriate for me to go to her and say, hey, this is a thought I have, or is that, does it need to be under public, is what I'm asking?
Well, the Brown Act applies to you, so you're all actually welcome to ask questions or present ideas through me, because I am not part of the five of you, and I can pass that on to the consultants so that they just have that on the back of their mind. If you can talk to one of the representatives on the GPAC, but you would just need to check that they haven't talked to anybody else or between themselves about it. So there I become really cautious, because likely Jennifer and Esther will be discussing most of this between themselves.
But it is appropriate to talk about it in a meeting.
Whenever we have this agendized, we're talking about the subject matter,
Yeah.
it's perfectly appropriate for you to provide any ideas.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure about that exactly, but that's okay. I mean, I'm just, with the Brown Act and,
Well, we can, have a more broad description that
yeah.
it
that's
can
fine.
include design element.
Okay, any other comments? Thanks for your patience again to this evening. City staff comments, any other comments?
No comments?
Yeah, just to preview, next agenda, we'll have a presentation on dark sky compliant. And right now, we have about 5 applications that we'll be bringing forward. Most of them are sign items. And we will try to be as efficient as possible in our presentations.
Okay. Beautiful. We appreciate your work on it.
And just one other point, I do appreciate how, you have formed some really good direction to staff when working with applicants, and hopefully we'll be able to focus people on the desires of the design guidelines and your implementation of those. So this does give us really good guidance.
Good, thank you, appreciate that. And the clearer we are, the easier your job is, too.
Yeah, thanks
And-
for being on the front.
Yeah, we appreciate that, yeah. Anything else before I wield the,
I'll just make one comment. I
Please.
mentioned this earlier, and I don't want to beat the white building with black trim thing to death, but it is, I'm certain it's going to keep coming up. And I would love maybe at some point in a meeting, if it's appropriate, towards the end, like today, when we're all here, to have a discussion about, as long as it's not pertaining to a particular project, I think that's appropriate, where we come up with sort of a guideline for kind of how we feel like, it's just some things I'm thinking of, like, we had this discussion today. Maybe if it's in the DR20 and it's off the path, then that would be acceptable. Maybe if it's the only one being proposed in that area, maybe if it's replacing the old standby of tan and brown. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying all those things have to apply, but for
Right.
me, I think we're
I
going
think
to
that's good.
keep coming up against this, and it would be great to kind of know. So then, of course, then staff has an even better idea of saying, like, this is what the design review committee will approve and this won't, and we might as well not even bother, mostly just to save time for them, and heartache, and expense.
I think that's a great idea, and I think there's checklists or whatever that we can help create that'll make
Yeah.
that easier.
It's kind of like a framework. It is like
Yeah.
a style guide, like Brian was saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I also think that from now on, starting today, when new applications come in, share those design standards if you haven't. I mean, I think maybe you have, but I think, I have a sense that that wasn't necessarily always part of the application process. And it was expected, but I think it's important for them to know that and what's expected of us and what we expect of them, and then that'll help somewhat. On these projects that are in the pipeline, it's very tough. This last one's a great example of that. Okay,
Okay.
absent further comment, it's 8:05, and we're adjourned. Thank you.